Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 177 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. We are closing in on 200 episodes. That's mind-boggling to me, but I think I've said that 100 times now on this podcast because this thing just keeps rolling. And today we're going to do this a little bit differently. Normally, I barely introduce the episode and then I do a little bit of unpacking at the end and just pointing out what the episode means to me. But today, I think, needs to be a little bit different. And that's because I had some unpacking to do after this episode that I think will affect how you listen to it. So right now I've got one of today's guests, Mario Stanley, whose voice you'll be hearing throughout the next year or two, sprinkled throughout episodes. What's up, Mario?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for taking time out of your day to do this. It's, since we sat down and talked with today's other guest, Dynell, I've done so much thinking about this episode because it was such a beautiful, special, and a little bit confusing moment for me. I just had all sorts of emotions pulled in different directions. So I wanted to run these things past you. First off, let's sort of set the episode up. You and I met the night before to start recording, and I asked you the question, what's it like when you see another black person in the gym? Like, is there this dance you both have to go through? And you told me about meeting Dynell in the gym. Can you sort of give that story again, just briefly?
Yeah. So, Dynell, you're amazing if you're listening to this right now. I love you, brother. Yeah, it's kind of a little weird. It was a weird experience because you're used to being in a space where you don't see other black people. And just, a little bit about my life. I'm just used to being the token black guy, just kind of wherever I've gone. I'm a military brat, grew up in mostly like different, predominantly white schools. And so being in the climbing industry for as long as I've been and as long as I was climbing, it was probably, I want to say, 5 years before I ever saw Dynell or another black person in the gym. And, you see people with day passes coming in, but he was the first person I saw with his actual own shoes and legitimate rock climbing shoes. And it was a little weird. I was a little taken back, almost like this is kind of my space, but at the same time, I was super happy to see someone. And it was honestly a very confusing emotion when it first happened. I didn't really know how to respond because I was juggling kind of like two emotions.
Mm-hmm. And you were coaching at the gym at that time, right?
Yeah, I was coaching, running youth programs, and which I still do now to this day, and coaching adult programs. And he had come in actually right after my youth practice. So I literally just, sent the kids out. I was shoeing up, and I had just dropped down off of a boulder. I'll never forget it. I had just dropped down off of Smalls Walls at our Dallas location. And if you've ever been to Summit, Dallas, we have this wall called Big Tex. It's just massive right in the front of it when you walk in. And when you look down the canyon, there's another little baby version of Big Tex, and it's called Smalls Walls. But when you're on the wall, you can't see anything really around the corner because you're too focused climbing, but then you just really can't see. And you drop down. I just dropped down, and I remember walking a little around the corner, and he just stepped up onto the retaining wall. And I stopped dead in my tracks, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, we're here now. And yeah, it was a very interesting feeling after that. And I think we, slightly were coy and kind of like flirted with each other with eyes, kind of like, oh, you're here. Okay, I see you. We're kind of going back and forth. And then eventually we like chatted a little bit, had a little passing conversation. And it was just kind of trying to make sure like we're both on the level and, just making sure we can jive with each other. Because, personalities are different. I mean, just because two people are black doesn't mean they're going to get along. Doesn't mean they have the same personalities.
Yeah.
But it took a little bit of like flirting and massaging, and then I can't tell you eventually when it was, but we just eventually started having some real talk between each other. And I think it definitely came in the form of talking about rock climbing because, I've had a little bit more experience with him, and I was just kind of telling him like, you need to shut up and try harder and different aspects. And then that kind of led into really kind of talking about our personal lives and the things and it was just really organic, but it was a little nerve wracking. I'm not going to lie. It was very, 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 very nerve wracking in the beginning to just kind of open up to him in general in that space because I've just never done it. I'm used to being, when you're a coach, you're kind of at I don't want to say like you're the alpha in the room, but people look at you like that. I don't like using that term because I don't think it's, that's a whole nother thing. Rock climbing's too ego based for that. But it was a very different experience. And now, he lives in Denver, but it was probably one of the most moving experiences finally to have conversations with people that were not about rock climbing, but we both love rock climbing so much and we could switch back and forth in that topic. And it was also just nice to talk to another guy. Building that kind of intimacy with another man is something that is very different. And, my father is very straightforward. We have that kind of intimate relationship. I'm used to talking to men like that, but only in very small circles. And I just haven't had that in Dallas. And I hadn't had that in Dallas since I moved there. Honestly, there's a few people I can think of that I started to get to that level with, but relationships go, friends come and go. And, those people, when I wasn't talking to them, they were more concerned about where I've been instead of just picking up our relationship from where we left off. And those friendships I realized weren't at a level that I was willing to be vulnerable and intimate with as a level as Dynell and I had.
Yeah. I thought it was really kind of fascinating and unexpected for me. Like when you first mentioned it and then you said, oh, well, I invited Dynell over. He actually lives here in Denver now. He's going to come over tomorrow. And we thought, oh, let's record a conversation about this idea of, two black people seeing each other for the first time in the gym and what that's like. And I didn't really know what to expect. And even after meeting Dynell and, realizing that he's this great human and just one of the easiest people to be around, I still didn't know what to expect of this conversation. And I was a little blown away by the level of like male joy. Just this there was just this pure love happening between the two of you that I really have never experienced or seen between two men, especially out in the open like that. And then to be totally honest, while the conversation was happening, as a podcast host, as somebody who knows this is going to become a piece of media, I was like, this is gold. This is amazing. I'm so fortunate to be able to witness this and to be able to give it to a bunch of other people who can hear it. And then as it started to this is, I can't come up with a better word, so I'm going to use the word devolve because that's how I felt in the moment, but it's not how I feel anymore. It started to devolve into anger and talking about the current state of the country, how black people have been and are treated. And it became just as visceral as the love was this anger. And my thought at the time was, damn, I wish it had just stayed love. But then afterward, and after thinking about it, I realized how fucking beautiful and special it was to be able to watch you two be able to connect to each other through that love and that anger in the same way. And I don't have to, like, when I left Betty's house, I didn't have to fear for my life driving down the street. You two do, and you two get to have that anger and get to express that anger. Question for you, had you had the opportunity, because I got the feeling that you hadn't, and maybe Dynell hadn't either, had the opportunity to really connect with someone else that you love about the anger you were feeling about the country. Had you been able to do that prior to this?
Yeah. So I first want to preface, like, everyone's communication style is very different. And I think it's very important to understand how you like to communicate, who you want to communicate to, because that's very important. And then you also have to give that person the full permission to just give it to you as they want, or give it to you as they see it. And so the answer is, yeah, a little bit, but this is just the way I am. I talk about probably the most intimate parts of my life more to men than I do to women. I don't know why. It's just where I feel comfortable. I think it's just because, I have 5 uncles, 5 uncles, and I always grew up around a lot of men, and they always jokingly talked about their feelings, talked about their stuff, talked about that, even if it was like casual joking at family events. But I was just used to hearing them in passing saying that. And so have I had that level of a conversation? No, not in Dallas, and not even before really meeting Dynell. I mean, I talked to my father about it casually, but no, honestly, no, because it's hard to find someone that you can just be that open and that vulnerable with, especially in a place where you didn't grow up. And then once you do find someone, you still actively have to give them permission. It's just like kind of reading your beta. Once you read the beta of your route, you still got to make the decision to actually do the beta and try and send the route. Actually, more so just do the thing, And that, I think, is like the hardest part for some people in climbing. And I know that was the hardest part for me in my relationship with him, because the only other person I have in my life like that I talk to intimately of that level with another man is my best friend Josh, which I grew up with. I've known him since grade school, and he lives here in Texas, in Austin. But, he got that permission, because we were playing in a sandbox together. Dynell, there was a point, and I don't remember exactly when that was, but there was a point where I think he just knew he had the permission, and we were outside talking, and he was just like, I'm just going to level with you and be real with you. And I didn't stop him, because, we had talked enough, and there's a point where you give that person permission, whether you verbally tell them or not. Some people you have to, some people you don't, but you have to give that person permission to kind of speak that kind of truth in your life. Because if not, you'll immediately get defensive about it, or you always give yourself the opportunity to get defensive about it. And you have to take away that opportunity in order for it to be genuine. And it was rough. I mean, it's definitely, it's rough. And talking about the concept of fearing for my life and all that other stuff. And I just recently made a post about my experience in the climbing community. And, I've always kind of had to have the attitude of, screw it, I'm here. I don't care whether you like it or not. But that's just the reality of, growing up Black in the 90s, I'm going to be in this space because I want to be, whether you like me or not. And if that means I got to play the token Black card, then great. I'm going to play the happy token Black card to keep the rest of you white people happy and comfortable, but I'm still going to get mine. And then once you realize I'm getting mine, I'm not going to stop. And I know it sounds kind of abrasive, and anybody listening to this, that kind of sounds like a little jacked up, but I mean, that's just the reality of the world that, we live in. We're playing that card where I need to make sure you feel comfortable But at the end of the day here, I'm here to get what I need to get. And as long as you feel comfortable and you're not going to disrupt my ecosystem, I'm going to do that. But if I'm far enough along where you are no longer a threat to my ecosystem and you are threatened by my prosperity or threatened by whatever I'm doing, and you find that threatening, then hopefully I'm far enough removed in whatever I'm doing where you don't matter anymore. But the reality is we have to kind of dance that line more often than not. And even in relationships where you think, even you dance that relationship with people who are allies, you still do. And, there are very few people, as I said, like that even are allies of mine that I can like get really deep in that conversation, because it goes beyond just, man, I mean, you're not just talking about things anymore, like things that you can see. You're really talking about matters of the heart, matters of the mind, and then you're just throwing it all together like a big pot of mole. And there's a lot of stuff mixed in mole, and there's a lot of emotions, and there's a lot of things mixed all into this whole thing. And it just takes time to talk about it, and it takes time to figure it out. And I know I'm kind of ranting on this here, but to answer your question, no, it's just because it's complicated. And it's, you've got to be willing to put yourself out there.
Yeah. Something Betty said multiple times throughout the weekend was this idea of multiple truths, and that we can all hold multiple truths, and we have to make space for other people to hold their multiple truths. And that really resonated with me. And that, that whole weekend was such a special and educational and just an experience that I really had to unpack and think through. And like you said, so many emotions, so many ingredients went into it. And, I think it's really special that you have been able to have this relationship with other men. I'm the opposite. I have this relationship with women rather than with men. For some reason, I just connect to women better most of the time. And I just want to say thank you, and thanks to Dynell for letting us into this moment between you two. I think it's incredibly special, incredibly beautiful, and I don't know that I would trade this experience for anything else. It seems like one of the most important moments of my life, frankly, was getting to witness this. And being able to put it out today, especially, I think is really important, because after last night's debacle of a debate and what's been going on in this country for months now, and so many people starting to see the truth of what's been going on for centuries, I think a lot of us need hope. And the beginning of this conversation is one of the most hopeful, beautiful, loving things I've ever seen. But we also have to realize that there are multiple truths to this moment. That yes, we need the hope, and we should hear it, and we should have it. But there's also a lot of fucking anger out there, and there's a lot of reason to be angry. And that's something I really appreciate about this conversation.
Well, I want to thank you for coming down, reaching out to me. I mean, I do want to say, like, it's very important that the thing I want to talk about to say to you is thank you so much for reaching out with intent, because like not a lot of people do that. Like a lot of people reach out and they have the intent to learn, they have that, but like you had the intent to learn, to provide resources to help, and then most importantly, to continue that process. It's not a cycle. It's not a one-time stamp. It's not doing this for a month. It's not doing this for like a year. Like you've committed to like, this is an ongoing thing, because this is like a living, breathing organism, this whole situation. It's like, it's real. And, you know, I want to thank you for that. And I also want to say to you, and I know I speak for Dynell when I say this, you know, you're always welcome in the brotherly love. So if you want to come on in, get a hug.
Man, I'm coming in, and I can't do this thing without you. So I appreciate that massively. And we're going to jump into this thing, and we'll be hearing from you again soon. So Let's get into it.
And you opened up with like, oh shit, it's like good to see another brother climbing or something like that. I remember that. I was sold. Do it. Yes, take me there.
This time, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build.
I applaud a man who dated a taller woman. Like that is like that's a self-confidence that you've already developed. That you're like, I don't care what anybody says about me. Period. I know
think
who I
you've
am.
known that about me for a long time. Now, my fucking meter is at 11 all the time.
So this is why I was drawn to you, I think, right? So like even coming to the gym the first time, like I came in and I was already super skeptical. And I preface this with like I love all people, so I don't have any problem with anything. But it's a little like off-putting when you go into a building and you see like 98% white. And you're like, oh shit, like okay, where do I fit in?
I mean, you got to switch different gears.
Right. You think to a point to like, where do I fit in, right? And I think someone was having this conversation with me over the phone the other day where we were talking about there's this unintentional hostility almost, and some of it that we place on ourselves, right? Because we put ourselves in a situation where a defense is automatically up.
Yep.
And I think that's where I was experiencing when I first went to the gym. It's almost like self-inflicted, like thought of hostility around me. So clam up, you know what I mean? Like do what people do when they get sort of nervous or uneasy in a situation. Look at my headphones, climb, mind my own business. I'm good. And I think you were one of the first persons, and you opened up with like, oh shit, it's like good to see another brother climbing or something like that.
I remember what the pickup line was.
I know, right? I was sold. Do it. Yes, take me.
Yeah, no, man, I'll never forget that moment because it's like, I remember so like if you've ever been to the gym at location, so you remember where, so you got Big Tex, right?
Yeah.
You got the Island.
Big Tex.
You got Smalls. You got the Whale, which is, happy it's still here.
Which hands down, I'm going to tell you that summit had the best name for walls. And I don't know if that was because of my first time climbing.
You know who named that shit? Most of that shit.
Did you?
Homeboy, play. I told you I'm a Stegosaurus in this game when it comes to Dallas.
That's why I'm crushing on you. Literally all the time, dude. Yeah.
Kids are always like, oh, you've been around forever. I'm like, nah, I'm a Stegosaurus. They're like, what does that mean? T-Rex and man saw each other. I died long time ago. Long time ago.
But you're still around.
Yeah, I mean, the ghost
Still
of Christmas past has got to be here somewhere.
Still killing it.
But I'll never forget, I was standing in front of Smalls Walls, and it was not your first time there, too, because I'd actually noticed you because this person shall not be named, but they were like, shit, Mario, there was another black dude in here today. And I was like, looking around.
Was it Nick Curry?
Nah, I wasn't Nick Curry. But I could definitely see how it would be him. But you weren't there. You had long gone. And then I saw you, and then I was climbing, I was bouldering, I was just warming up, doing my thing. And then you had kind of had your headphones in, and you were just doing your thing. And I'll never forget, I looked at your shoes, and I was like, all right, bet. I was like, once I realized you owned your own shoes, I was like, all right, bet. This is
Black
cool.
Evolves. That was my first.
Yeah.
That was my first pair, man.
Yeah, and then we started talking after that, and then I think, and you and even I had this conversation maybe a few months later that, and I've mentioned this to Chris a couple times, but we talked about like being on the level with each other and being able to actually talk and actually hold a conversation and actually really kind of dive a little deeper into conversations with each other because, like no offense to anybody else in any way, shape, or form, but like some of the characters and some of the other black and brown, at least men that were coming into that gym, were not that way. And for those people listening to this podcast who aren't really familiar with the geography of Dallas, so the Dallas Rocks gym is really right across the street from some kind of quote unquote hood Latino apartments. But then right down the way at the intersection of, is that Skillman and Forest?
Yeah.
Right down the way. There's a whole bunch of Section 8 houses, Section 8. And we had a lot of issues with robbery coming in there and people breaking in or people coming in posing like they're going to get a membership. They would pay for a membership and they would hide out at the Cubbies and have a lookout and someone would be stealing shit. And like, it was just this big issue. So, it's really hard not to have this like preconceived, like, shit, what you doing? But once I knew you had your own shoes, I wasn't worried about it anymore.
Nice.
And then, that was kind of a big thing. That was like, it was definitely a big thing seeing you in the gym for the first time.
Yeah.
I remember that because it was me, it was you, it was Jarrett. Jarrett was in the gym, but Jarrett was working there. But then I think he got fired shortly thereafter.
Shit.
Yeah, we'll let that be. That's not appropriate for this podcast. So I'm moving on.
Wait, can we curse on this podcast?
This whole
We can say whatever we want.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
this whole concept, like when Mario and I were talking the other night, and I was like, "Do you like if you see another black dude in the gym, is there almost some like, I'm the black guy here, like this is my gym?"
Fuck no. It was like for me, every time a new black guy came in, so there was this kid named Connor. What's Connor's last name? He had dreadlocks. He was a light-skinned kid.
Oh,
Super
the
to
kid
himself.
who was a musician.
He is one. I didn't even know this kid was a musician, and he travels around the entire
Yeah, he's
world.
good.
And we just started talking on just some friend shit, and like me and this kid just connected, which was super dope. And it kind of young blood. That's his name. But
That's
when
a good name for a traveling musician,
right? Like the kid, and the kid is like super talented. But I met Connor for the first time. And it was almost like this sense of relief. So it was just like, holy shit. All right, cool. We got another black man in the building. It's super easy to relate. And I don't think that we like intentionally want to make it difficult to relate with people with other races. But there's something about like having it's almost like an unconscious bias.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's, that there's a lot of, if you looked at a Venn diagram, there's a lot of overlap in terms of how that person was raised.
Yep.
And how you're raised.
Yep.
And there's some immediate identifiers that you can go into and you can say, oh shit, okay, I can be on a different level with this person because we have some things in common. I think it's just almost this automatic assumption of likeness when you see someone of the same race, right? So when I would see like young black dudes coming in the gym, killing it, I'd be like, fuck yes. I'm like, yes, those are the guys I want to come in. Let's have some conversations. Let's talk. And not even on some race shit. It's just let's just talk and, find a good level and then make a comfortable environment. And I think that's where we just started to expand our circle from there. Cause, working with Mario, I met a bunch of people. Like I met Chris, I met Nick, obviously I met Jared, I met Ben, just a ton of people. And these guys are of different races, but meeting him first made it easier for me to fall into these other circles because it was almost like he loaned me his credibility. And I was like, like, that feels good. I was like, so it just makes it super easy.
It's so funny. You and I haven't talked about this in a long time, but like my thought was the complete opposite because me working in the gym all the time, I'm so used to different people coming in. So I'm used to different people kind of coming in and being like, okay, it's cool. It's rock climbing. This is not really my thing. Or, and it's kind of like, it's one of those things like you don't really want to invest in a relationship that that's not going to really stick around. And so it's kind of like, I kind of was dismissive of a lot of things. And I've always been very dismissive until our relationship. I've honestly, and this is, people can hate on me for saying this, but I was very dismissive of black and brown men coming into the gym. Black and brown women, it wasn't really a big issue with me because the fact of the matter is they were so underrepresented in the gym in general. I wanted them to be there. Yeah. And then it was just because it was just never. Like Bethany was probably, I want to say Bethany was probably the only black or brown woman that I knew had an active membership for over 4 months when she climbed in the gym. Because that was kind of like the ticker. Like because you get this for like 4 month special back in the D-Rocks days. Mm-hmm. But like if you went past that, then okay, you were in the good situation. Like you could move on. But it wasn't until I met you and, and I feel slightly guilty for this, but slightly not in any way, shape or form. But there was a lot of people who just kind of came through and was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. This is cool. And like, there was a certain amount of like, I don't know how else to say it, but a certain amount of hood that was involved in this shit. And it just like the concept, they could not get past the concept of like what was going on. And now understanding this whole black and brown experience and everything that's going on now, even more so, I think I was definitely, I look back at this as me being very unsympathetic or unempathetic to how they felt in this situation. But at the same time, I also looked at it like, all right, rock climbing for you is not cool enough where you don't really want to do this. And that's okay. And I respect that. And you want to do whatever your sports are. You want to do whatever your things are. But I'm going to just go ahead and let you move along because, I could just tell they didn't want to be there to begin with. Yeah. And so me personally, I didn't want to dive into this deep relationship with them.
Yeah.
Or I didn't really want to have to open up. I was very, as far as customer service, I gave you the 100% full white treatment of customer service plus the extra brother high five smile at the end. You got the bonus package. And, and it was definitely, I'm letting you know, it's cool that you come back. But it wasn't until, to be honest with you, it was not until that 4-month mark or you see someone with their own climbing shoes. That's like the best. I don't care if they're like really aggressive or anything like that. Just if you own your own gear, that shows to me that you have made an investment in this sport. And bare minimum, if you're on the fence, you have at least to be like, all right, I'm going to give this thing a shot, and just kind of run with it.
That's interesting because nowadays I feel like you wouldn't have that same low watermark where you're like, okay, that person is a climber. That person's someone I want to invest in, because now just everybody has their own shoes and it's so common, and you'd have to see even more. And I think this is something that we kind of learn in our childhood, that, we hang out with our team or we hang out with the people who are interested in the same things that we are. And those are the people we invest our time in and build these relationships with. And even if we've all seen it, where if you switch sports or something and you stop hanging out with the people you used to hang out with, and now you hang out with the new people, it happens so often that we're just looking for someone who fits in with this thing that we're in love with, whatever it is. And in your case, it was climbing, and Dynell rolls in with his own shoes and you're smitten.
I was. I was definitely. I definitely was. It was definitely that, and I don't know, man. It was a very interesting experience, and I think the thing that I appreciate and I valued the most about our relationship in the gym consistently was our ability to have conversations on what we would have conversations with any other white person in the gym, and then back up, and then if we felt, and this is one thing I will say with you too, I think is very different. Not everything needed to be from the black perspective. Sometimes you and I would just kind of roll with it for how it is. And then sometimes we would be able to sit back and look at it from that perspective and really kind of layer it on. And I think this also comes with your job too. Like you were you and I have had this conversation. Like, I think we actually talked about it while you were at Apple one day. But like, you're very used to navigating through white spaces. You're very used to navigating through these spaces. And I think that was like the thing. And that's one of the things that in our conversations that stood out to me a lot, because like, it's different. Like if you're used to code switching, then it's the best way to describe it is this. It's like,
It's definitely a skill.
It is a skill, but it's a skill that you don't have to talk about. And like, I mean, it's like, I imagine it's like for women being a woman. Like they don't need to talk to another woman about being a woman. Like that just goes hand in hand. With us, it was very much like we never needed to have that conversation because we automatically had that conversation about like flipping in between situations, dealing with this, talking to this people. And, I don't know. I can't remember every conversation, but I do remember hearing you talk about work one day and you were like, yo, I had these people show up. I just had to put on this face. I had to put on this thing and just kind of give them what I want. I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't want to deal with them. And I admired that because I was like, okay, you understand what it takes. Like at the end of the day, like we just have to get our job done so we can go home, live in peace, be fine with our lives and not have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Unless you grow up in a situation like that, or the crowd that we had last night, unless you're in a situation where you are forced to deal with that, like, code switching is real. And I don't think anybody who doesn't do it on a regular basis understands it.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the best ways of pushing back and rising up is through survival, and code switching in a lot of ways is survival.
100%.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's an adaptation to the situation, right? And the ones who adapt live the longest. And and we may not even be talking about just physical life. So the piece that you share, I think 100% is accurate, right? It's while in Texas, working for Apple, I've been there for 11 years, right? Almost 11 years at this point. I was always the one or the other one. You know what I mean? So it was one or one of two. We hold several positions, but like lead sales position, I was one of them. Or when I got to a lead position, I was one of one in the Texas market. When I got to manager, I was one of two in the Texas market. I'm in Colorado. I'm one of two in Colorado market.
Right.
So learning to speak different languages and adapt to different situations, that sometimes even make me uncomfortable because I'm just like, I don't feel like I can be my truest self in this moment. and maybe a little bit of that is me putting it on myself because I've had to adapt so many times. But I think like lately, it's just been like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I like this is where I'm at. This is who I am, right? And to be truthful, like a lot of it is just developed through a certain self-confidence. But then, and this last year has been one that have been like personal growth. But a lot of it also came back when we started to have the conversation around Black Lives Matter. And I'm educating myself way more than I have in the past. In the past, I put my knowledge base pretty much within Apple or whatever I want to do recreationally. So a lot of my knowledge would be around work and climbing.
Yeah.
And now that I get to reach back and I learn about historically American history, and I call it American history because I don't separate Black history and American history.
Yeah.
And there's a specific reason I don't do that is because Black history is American history.
Absolutely.
Right. But as I started to learn about it, it makes me more confident in the person who I am. And it makes me understand that I don't need to atone for, my nature.
Right.
Or my upbringing. That's a unique part of me. And when there is a unique part of me that I can add to a mixture of things, it is only going to make it better, right? Because that's where I can bring my best self. So I think this last year has been a year of exploration, a year of like working through some struggles, but it's like basic shit. Sometimes I just want to play some rap music, and I'm not even like a person who listens to a lot of rap music, but sometimes I want to play some rap music and I want to bump my shit. I want to listen to it loud. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to bump it. And I'm going to pull up next to somebody and it doesn't matter who they are in the next car. I'm just want to listen to my shit. I pay for that car. I pay for that sound system. I can play it the way I want. There's certain liberties and freedoms in that, and that's what I want. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, you're 100% right. I think in these moments where we find ourselves consistently like code switching, and we learn to do it at a level like almost like just in society in general.
Yeah.
I have to call myself on there and say, no, like, who am I? What do I want in this moment? It's not about what people want around me. It's what I want in this moment and feeling comfortable with that. So that's a part of me that is growing, but you're 100% dead on. It was just like navigating that workspace. I literally bought that space into in the climbing, but I also don't think that it's a bad thing to have to work through some of that. Look at him, he's nuts. But I don't think it's a bad thing to have to work through that. Because it's learning how to navigate different spaces, because you got to realize that it's a balance. Is it always about you? It's about the people around you as well. So I think making those adjustments somewhat are necessary in certain moments, and it's also good in certain moments. So it helps, you know.
You mentioned. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like it's a learned survival skill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and we said this earlier, but like, it is a learned skill, and it is the only learned skill that you have if you're going to move up in certain spaces. And it's the way it goes. Like, whether you like it or not, like, this is just, you have to have these learned skills, and you have to have the learned skills at the end of the day You have to have the learn skills to make certain people within your companies or within you working
Comfortable.
feel super comfortable.
Because you're not going to see a person that looks like a doughboy with gold fronts running a Fortune 500.
No.
And I'm going to tell you, like growing up, these dudes make fucking money out of nothing.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. These dudes who are rap artists, they make millions. Drake made what, 200 million last year off of words.
Yeah.
When you think about shit like that, that's fucking insane.
Yeah.
They're just smartest people, but just due to aesthetics.
Yeah, absolutely. I just listened to you're both from Texas, or you're not from Texas, but
From New Orleans.
but you're both Texas people, have been there. And,
Fair enough. Yep.
And we were just listening to a lot of Swisher House and Rap a Lot out at the gym climbing. And I just listened to a great podcast with Jay Prince about the founding of Rap a Lot. And
Oh, dope. You're going to have to pass that along.
it was mostly just about, I'm not going to be able to make a living anywhere else the way I want to. And it's not because I'm not a great businessman, because he obviously is. It's because of the way he looks and where he comes from.
Yep.
Yeah. That's, that's just the reality of the situation. And I mean, I think, I don't know. It's one thing when you can walk, it's one thing you can roll through spaces, and you can roll through spaces like, all right, I'm going to do this. You're just questioning me on like what I know in my brain. But it's another thing when you roll through spaces, and I don't care what anybody tells you to be and how much they want, but either two things happen. They expect you to be better than everybody else in the room, or they don't give a shit that you're in the room to begin with.
Yeah.
And like, this is kind of how it works. And good intentions, good hearted, but at the end of the day, it's like, you're kind of here and we'll use you when you need you, or you have just got to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And like, you have to operate in either one or two of those spaces,
How long had you been climbing when you met Mario?
A couple of weeks, maybe.
Like 3 weeks?
Yeah, it wasn't that long.
It was at least 3 weeks.
It was something like that.
3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Let's just say a month.
Yeah.
I think that's safe.
Yeah, we were checking each other out. It was like a
The courtship.
we were definitely courting.
it was a courtship.
I think I saw you one day. Now we're going to talk.
It was like a high school situation.
Flirting here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said something about code switching being like speaking another language, and that's exactly how I think I would have described it looking in. And then there's also languages, like there is a climbing language, if you're a climber, you can speak a specific language with your people.
He taught me this.
That's what was it easier for you to learn it because Mario is somebody who looks like you share these experiences that you both share.
I think this
was an easier way for me to learn this language.
That was more of, he's a natural teacher. And this is what I appreciate about him.
Yeah.
Cause so this was my introduction to climbing. I physically get on the wall first. I do the things that normal new climbers do, right? Where I do the rainbow climb. I just climb whatever. And, it's like trying to flex for the ladies some a little bit. I can climb this. I'm good. I'm strong. And then I realize I'm doing it all wrong. So I think after having some conversations with Mario, and I can't remember the way that the conversation went, but he said, just watch people. And that's what I remember from that conversation.
Yeah.
And dude, I sat in the gym and I climbed less and watched people more. And I was like, yo, what's that? And he was like, oh yeah, it's a back flag. Oh, okay. What's this? Oh, that's a rose move. Oh, what's this? And he just like started giving me the jargon, like the climbing language. And he said, you gave me a resource actually because you had it on Google Docs. And you sent me the email of all climbing language. You remember this, right?
I have that. I have like this preloaded climber lingo doc that I pulled it off of like Super Topo and a little bit off of Mountain Project and a little bit of that, and then I just mashed a bunch of it together, and I still have that. Yeah, it's funny. I share that with new hire coaches, but I remember I sent that to you.
See what I'm saying? Like this motherfucker is like the black male Mother Teresa. He's like amazing. Seriously, like
I wouldn't have come up with that descriptor.
I mean, I'll take it. I'll let the hair down and let it go.
Because his thing is he's always giving, right? And like I'm a person who believes that knowledge is probably the the most undervalued thing in life, right? And I'll say it specifically to any sort of like financial value, I should say that. But it's the most undervalued thing in life, and people are unwilling to pay for knowledge.
Yeah.
But there's a lot in it, right? Because I became a much better climber. Like, little quick story. This kid comes up to me, and I had been climbing for probably about a year and a half at this point. Never talked to this kid once. And he's like, yo, I just want to say this. Like, I watched you climb. Do not like aspire at some point to climb the way you climb. And I felt like I was climbing like shit. And I was like, this kid is like telling me that. I don't even know this kid. But what I learned from, like, for myself, I learned mostly from him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was able to help me like navigate the newness of climbing, get me down with the language, help me with a lot of moves. I literally watched him do the work and emulated him for a really long time. And I think the proudest moment that I think I had between he and I, one day I'm climbing and I just like hit this move, and I'm super psyched because I just hit this move, and I'm climbing probably like a 7 or an 8 at this point, and I had never climbed a 7 or 8. And Mario walks over and just casually says, "Oh, looking like we got a little swag on that climb." I was like, "Oh shit!" I was like, "Yo, that's the props from the man right there, right?" I was like, "I'm feeling good." I took my headphones off. I'm like dapping him up, and I was just like, "Yo, that made me feel great." And part of that was because he started, you know, he drew me in just with his personality and who he was as a person. But then he just started with like being a resource for me, which made me invest in our relationship. And then for him to just give me little props like that, I was just like, shit, now I feel like I made it. Now I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
So having him there just kind of adds that wealth of knowledge, which is, I don't know, man, it just made it so easy. It made it so nice. I still feel like that was a good basis of the relationship and the friendship that we're growing even now. So yeah, Mario's the man, dude. Seriously.
You flatter me too much. Hold on 1 second. Be careful, the dog giving out preview pumps. He's giving out some serious preview pumps. It's all right, bro. Dude, you ready to go? You
Hey,
primed
Freeze,
up.
Come here. Relax, man. Hey, relax. Good.
Was there?
That's his keyword. He when you tell him relax, you gotta stop,
Okay,
relax.
cool,
Yeah,
cool.
he calms down. Hopefully.
Yeah, now you flatter me too much, sir, but I appreciate it. But like, I get what you're saying. It's like, I don't know, man. It's like, I've always looked at it this way. Like, if you actually want to rock climb and you really want to be here, then I think the tools should be made available to you.
Yeah.
And whether you choose to absorb them or not, that's kind of the real deal. And I think the one, you and I have definitely laughed about this a lot at people in the gym and talked about like people's egos and shit being involved and people just kind of losing. Actually, if this happened at Dallas, I think someone came down off a boulder and this white kid just was like, and you and I were just sitting there like,
I remember.
it was like
that.
next Friday. We were both like looking over and like,
damn.
I'm like, this is not necessary. Like, you need to like tone it down. And I remember going up to him right as I was about to. Another staff member went up and they were just like, "Are you okay? Everything going on?" And the dude was just so angry. And I get it. I've been mad at boulders too. You know, I generally just like pack my stuff up and leave because I'm angry. But this dude just let it out. But point being is like, if anybody wants to learn, I want to make the tools available regardless of who you are. I just, I was very happy that you were very receptive to them. And at the same time, I think the biggest thing is like, because I'll generally give a little bit, but then you started asking for more. And that's kind of, and like I said before, like that's kind of like, that's when I knew you were sold on the whole thing. And it's one of those things like, this is just an experience that I definitely wanted to share with you. And I think that is something that like, just black man to black man. I mean, it's just like you very rarely, you get to, I don't know. In my upbringing, there's not very many things that I've gotten to share or have camaraderie or do something with another brother. And, not to take away from like my best friend Josh, I grew up with and I've climbed with and done everything with, but I really want to be very clear when I say this. It's like, it's different when you finally see someone on the come up and you're coming into this and then like you actually want to be a part of it. And so that was important.
Was there a moment that either of you can point to when this courtship that you two had going on went outside the gym and became like, we're friends. We're not just friends in the gym? Because I see you both here and you don't live in the same city.
Yeah.
But it's obvious that it's more than just we climbed in the gym together.
I don't think it physically ever transpired out of the gym too many times, but I think we just knew.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think that's the best way to say it. Like, I felt like I just knew right away. But after the first, like, I don't want to say 5 or 6 conversations, and then once we could start laughing about shit, like that was it. Like I knew our relationship transcended beyond the gym, and so I was never. So yes, but there was never a physical point, and I can't point at a particular time of like when that was. I think it was an accumulation of joyful moments that basically solidified it. So like imagine like, I guess like you finally get like the joyful moments were all the corner pieces of the puzzles, and then the rest of it we just been filling in as we've been going along.
You saw me like look up to the right, and I was like, wait, was there a time? I was like, what was it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't think that was ever a thing. I think it was just like it was like if we saw each other in the gym, we had such mutual respect for each other.
Yeah.
Like I will say this, you were probably one of the few people in the gym, unless I'm coaching my kids or I'm with a client, like you were probably one of the few people in the gym. And I can think of all these people. There's not very many of them, but I will stop what I'm doing, make a moment to walk all the way up to you. I want to make sure that you know I see you, you're acknowledged, you're my homie, you're my friend, and I just want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And these other fools can wait. I think that was a thing for me, but I only say that now because I have to think about it, but I just did it intentionally.
Yeah.
Like
I literally felt that every time we're in the gym too. It's like literally not one time that I can think of. So the like shining moments of that is this man would be literally in the middle of a class that he is teaching, that he gets paid to teach. And I would want to make my way up to go see him because I wouldn't want to climb without speaking to him first. And we see each other. He'd throw it up. I'm going upstairs and I'm like, we're going to hug it out. Most of it was self-serving. He gave me a bear hug that cracked my back like 90% of the time.
every time.
So I was in it. I was like, yo, this is my guy. I was like, if he could do that for me, that's perfect. But he'll come downstairs if he's teaching the kids, whether we're on side with the big wall or we're on the bouldering side with Big Tex and Will and everything. He'd find me. We'd hug it out. We'd talk for a minute. He'd do his thing. He'd come back and find me. And if he had time to climb afterwards, he's like, yo, you going to be here? We're going to climb afterwards. And we just sit down and talk. And for me, like talking is a conduit to the best, my best relationships that I have, right? Typically, because I'm from New Orleans, like people do that over food. So conversation just like kind of happens naturally. We didn't have that environment. We had climbing. So that was a substitute to our physical nourishment. But when we found that space to just relax in a sea of people and just find our own circle to talk, it was awesome, man. And the thing I think made it easier, and I don't know if everybody's like experienced this socially, when you bring a new person into your conversation and things kind of feel like off or awkward because you don't know how to adjust in that conversation. I don't think I can point to a moment to where that ever happened with us. When we would bring people in our conversation and we meet, like that was a moment for me where I was just like, this is good. Like this is.
That was like Malik. When Malik stepped into the moment, Malik was like, oh shit, there's other brothers here?
Yeah.
We're just like, and next thing you know, I mean, you might as well start a quick little dance party, but that's how it worked out. And yeah, man, I mean, that's definitely it. I will say this. We did talk so much. Sometimes our relationship was not good for my climbing because we didn't climb at all.
We didn't climb at all. And it was the opposite, right? Like we had to find the balance because when we talked, we didn't climb at all. But then when we climbed hard, like we barely talked.
We barely said anything at all.
Yeah. Especially like when that big wall was up. What was the wall called again? The real wall in Summit?
The one at Dallas?
Yeah.
Big Tex?
No, not Big Tex. The
lead wall in the back.
Lead wall in the
wave, the wave wall, whatever that thing was called. But yeah.
So I was sharing, and to answer your question, you asked like, when was there a moment to where I think there was like this, and I'm going to paraphrase it to where it was almost like this absolute trust. And I always tell this story about him, and I tell this story to him. But we were climbing. And I'm a person that's like, I don't trust people with my life. And let me lay it out for you, right? This big wall, you climb, what was it, like 30, 40 feet in the air?
So just so everyone listening to this podcast have a clear idea, imagine going into an amphitheater, sport climbing amphitheater that has a massive dead roof. And the dead roof is at least, it was 3 4x8 panels. So
Insane.
At least, a little over 10 feet. And this whole wall is no more, like the maximum height of the ceilings in the gym was like 32 feet, 34 feet. So including framing. So the whole wall was maybe 28 feet off the ground.
And that's high for any person, any reasonable person. I'm going to say that's high, right? So I'm climbing this wall. Now to add on the top of that, it's an overhanging wall. So there's 2 levels to the overhang where it slants up and then it just flattens out at the top.
Steeper, yeah.
So you're, at this point, the person on the ground, if you don't trust them or they're like 40 pounds lighter than you, you're like, yo, I got to be careful the moves I make at this point, right? And this motherfucker asked me to skip the last 2 holds.
Clips.
The last 2 clips, sorry. Because he's like, and his rationale behind it is like, if you're up there, you're getting pumped out. Obviously, it's a almost 30-foot wall. You start to reach for those last holes. It takes a lot out of you, especially going into that incline, right? So you want to just like skip them. And I'm like, no, because that's my safety, dude. Like, what are you talking about? And if I come down, what I see is I'm looking at the physics of it, right?
He went from thinking you're Mother Teresa to like thinking you were crazy.
He is out of his mind, right? So I'm looking at the physics of it, right? And if you look at any flat wall and you look at an incline and you start to look at clips, if you're not caught the right way, basically you're going to swing and you're going to hit the wall, right? I'm already got shoes that I'm sizing down. I wear a size 10 normally in street size. I'm wearing an 8.5 shoe. So that's going to hurt. I'm looking at holds that I'm here on the wall. That's going to hurt.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at everything that's going to hurt. But I'm also looking down below and I see just basically this plank of wood. That's a
retaining wall.
The
retaining wall for the bouldering pit.
So yes. So I'm looking at that and I'm looking at all these factors, right? And I'm thinking humanly, like, there's no rationale behind this, so I shouldn't do that, right? And the one time that I try it, I see Mario come off his feet. I drop straight down. I feel amazing because I just made it through this, right? I'm alive, right? I feel good about it, but it also was like this rush. And like in that moment, I realized that I trust him and I was like, fuck it, let's go again. So I like after he goes, I go up for the next one and I'm like, I'm just not going to clip. He's like, all right, I feel good about that. And he's just catching me every single time.
Yeah.
And to this day, I haven't trusted anyone like I trust him to belay me. And like I said, trust for me doesn't come easy, but to physically trust someone with my life to do that work, like I think that was probably the moment for me where I said, oh, wow, this is more than just like a gym buddy kind of thing. Like this is a dude that I like. I like him as a person. I like him enough to trust him with my life. Because if I hit that ground, I'm paralyzed or dead at least.
I will say it was an airplane landing every single time.
Yeah,
because he would come down off of that whip, land. I'd go up,
feet kicking a little bit.
Feet kick a little bit, but here's the thing: is he would come down, kick a little bit, land on the ground. I would lower myself down, and we were right next to each other every single time. Smooth as butter landings. So, anybody out there looking for a professional belayer, I'll take.
Beast.
I'm available.
Yeah,
Beast.
We'll get the prices up on the website. Did either of you have other relationships like this with other black men in other sports or other arenas prior to this? And I'm asking because I don't have relationships like this with other men, and I think it's fucking beautiful. So I'm curious.
there's only two moments I can think of, and like one, I know this is probably stupid to say, but like our track and field team was like 60% white, 40% black, and it was one of those things where like all the black kids got together, and this is like, then granted, this is my upbringing, so I know it's not the same to everybody else's, but we would have these track meets and we would do this thing, but then eventually we just like, we had our own rituals, our own little chants that we would do, everybody that did track and field. And then at one point in time, we forcibly indoctored all the white kids into it because we realized as a team, we weren't going to win anymore if we didn't do this. So like, you know, just breaking barriers and like, you know, like, oh, no, y'all are cool. And like, nah, y'all motherfuckers need to get over here, get involved in the chant, get involved in the sway, whatever we were doing at that point in time. And so that was like probably one of the only times, because it wasn't my idea. It was actually Eddie's idea. And this is a kid growing up. We used to call him Eddie So Black because he was so black that he was purple. But
That's a thing.
It's definitely a thing. And so it was Eddie's idea. And, you know, that's like probably one of those few times, but that's in high school, you know, or like high school, middle school, like, you know, you don't know anything. I think the only, man, you know, I'm thinking of these work situations that I've had with jobs, but now in hindsight, looking at it, you know, outside of family or people that have literally been in my life since first grade.
Yeah.
No.
Agreed.
Honestly, the answer is no, flat out.
Yeah.
No.
Agreed. I have some friends in college that I keep in touch with. Those are my boys. I love them. But it's not like something like a sport or a physical activity that we found in common that helps keep us, you know, bound together and allow us to be part of a community like this, to where we can share these stories, even topics that we can include in the sport and transcend the sport. I don't think I've broken that barrier with anyone up to this point, which is probably shameful to say.
I mean, that's hard, man, because like you also have to understand, like, you know, beyond rock, let's just like call it for what it is. Beyond rock climbing, you and I, like, whether you want to call it personality types or, you know, those tests that you can take online or, you know, zodiacs or whatever it is, like you and I, you know, we bond on a very mental and a very subconscious level. Like, I think our string theories are vibrating at the same frequency. Yeah. And I think that's the big thing it is. And I think the big thing that I want to make very clear with people listening to this podcast and, you know, black and brown people listening to this podcast, so that you have your mans, you have your womans, you have your people that you call on. And when you meet those people, black or brown or white, let's just call it for what it is, but like you unequivocally know. And those people are either in your life for a season or for a lifetime. And I think you and I very, very, very quickly realized that we could just have raw level, very like visceral conversations of any kind of caliber with each other. And you and I both knew that that is far and very few between. You know, and I think, like, you know, with the introduction of your podcast, which actually you need to meet Devin, like, yeah, like, I think, like, you know, this is going to be like, you know, I don't know how to say it, but like, you know, Wonder Twins are two people, but fuck that. We'll just like three and combine and go.
Voltron.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pull out Voltron. Yes. Best cartoon ever, FYI. I do have the entire season, everything of that downloaded. And that's actually what I watch when I'm traveling and flying.
Yo, I'm hoping your crowd 21 and under understands what that is.
They may not. That's
I mean,
right.
they don't
can
know
Google it.
Voltron, but they've at least heard it in a rap video at least once or twice.
Man. Yeah.
I mean, if you've listened to Wu-Tang, you understand, you know, at least you've heard Voltron because they've quoted it at least 3 or 4 times.
Fucking Wu-Tang. Huh? Wu-Tang, just national treasure, man.
It is.
I'm gonna go ahead and declare it, and I think we should make it happen. On a federal level, I think we should just go ahead and just
Wu-Day.
Yeah, erect some statues and
I mean, I'm
create
down.
a holiday.
I feel like we should have them destroy Mount Rushmore, give it back to the Native Americans, and that's Wu Day because they talk about breaking shit up anyway.
Yeah,
so
yeah, just Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with.
Did you watch the show?
What's that?
on Netflix.
The Netflix show.
Yeah. Wait, you're talking about the one on Hulu?
Yeah, it was
on
it
Netflix.
was
On Hulu.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, on the one on Hulu. So yes,
And
I
then
did
there's
watch
the
it.
documentaries on
I'm waiting
Netflix.
for this. I'm waiting for
I've
the
not
season
seen the
2 to
Hulu
drop.
one. I've
I
seen
know.
the documentary.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the season 2 to drop on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I was like, this is good, like behind the scenes. I'm gonna be honest with you. The actors, like, I feel like hit the mark. Every single actor hit the mark. They found the people who can play those roles really well. And then just to kind of like see into the mind of like RZA, I'm like, one, that motherfucker is a little weird, but two, he is a genius, dude. Like
more than a little
exact
weird.
word that I'm about to use.
Doesn't he also
is a
have his own
genius.
science TV show now?
Dude, he is.
He's
like,
got all the things.
he's everywhere.
Oh no, he's an entrepreneur, and like I think that, and let's just call it for what it is. But like, I think if most rappers had access to at least the education or the mentorship that that they should have had, I think you would have had a lot more people like RZA come out of the game with businesses, with like really having opportunities, and it wouldn't be this just overall like crazy grind. And maybe I'm wrong but this is my perception of it. I think you would have had a lot more people who would have understand the meaning of building wealth. They would have had an understanding of building wealth within a community, because the problem is like we don't really have communities as black and brown people. We have neighborhoods, and a community pours money into itself. A community is self-sustaining. A community has protocols for behavior. A community has all these different structures. A neighborhood is just one step away from a hood.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is you had the glorification of the neighborhood. You never had the glorification of the community, because ain't nobody knows how to fucking do it.
Yeah.
And the problem is like, I don't care what you tell me, wealth management and the gaining of wealth and the gaining of that, unless you have someone, like, you can read all the books you want, but that's a skill you got to learn. Much like climbing is a skill. Like if you want to learn how to skip on volumes, you need to learn how to skip on with your money in the right way.
That's why them D-boys, man. That's why these boys getting in all kind of games, and they make all kinds of money.
But now, but imagine if that would have happened 20 years ago.
Oh my God.
I mean, really, like
Black wealth. Ugh.
too dangerous.
Oh man.
Black wealth was worse than public enemy number one.
Hey, I'm telling you.
That's what it was.
Well, I think that's how the government saw it.
Yeah.
As public enemy number one, and I think that's what they did. I mean, they saw it that way, and they did everything they could to block it.
100%. Every single massacre that happened in American history happened due to a potential wealth growth in the black community, right? Lane Massacre, Rosewood Massacre, Texas.
Black Wall Street.
Tulsa. Thank you. Yes, Black Wall Street. All of that, like all of those massacres, and that's the Chicago riots. You can go on and on and on. All of that was due to black people building wealth. You know what I mean?
In their minds, it's not allowed. This is something that is just not effing allowed unless we determine the confines of how it can work.
Right.
It's like, I think I said this to you earlier today. It was like, was it Dwayne Wayne? Who played Blank Man?
Y'all.
Remember Blank Man?
Damon Wayans.
Damon Wayans got on stage and he was just like, I don't understand why white people ask a black man who makes his first couple millions, do you think race and racist behavior is still an issue in America? No, because we're not going to say shit. I'm not going to incriminate myself. I'm not going to do this shit.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of it is you and I have always been able to have conversations on that level.
Yeah.
And I definitely will. I can definitely actually think of a couple times when you and I have had conversations on that level, and then we got real quiet because some people were walking by in the gym. Like you remember that one little spot, like next to the corner wall, like next to like you sitting on the bench, and then there's the bouldering wall, and there's that shit, and that shit gets real narrow.
Yeah,
I definitely remember there's a few times where we've definitely been like, oh, hold up. Let these people go by.
Real and like
but that's the way it is.
Real time code switching. We had to make sure we do that shit to not make people.
Oh no, you can't let people know that you know.
Yeah,
that's the thing is like you just got to keep them thinking that you don't know,
right?
And that you wonder what they want you to know,
right?
And really, reality is like, nah, man, we switching this shit on the side.
We had to do it 100%. Yeah, I think it was partly for us, but it was partly for them too. That thing that you kept referring to, that was from the movie CB4. Yeah, you remember with Chris Rock? Yeah. It was that NWA parody. Yeah.
That was around the same time as what was the other parody that came out?
What came out in '93?
It was
Don't be a menace.
something about it was Don't be a menace to South Central.
Don't be a menace
drinking
to
your
South
juice
Central,
in the hood or something like that.
Yeah, that was good. We are not going to quote any of that movie on this podcast, but that movie was amazing. Did you guys ever watch the original? But like, Don't Be a Menace.
Yeah. I've watched that a lot of times.
That movie changed my life. That movie changed my life because I think that was the very first time that, for me, growing up in Northern Virginia, the glorification, the personification of like rap and that gangster life. That's when I actually was like, oh shit, is this really how people do this shit?
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, there was aspects of it where I was like, and I said this to you earlier, like there was like, even that movie made me think in my mind, I was like, okay, well shit. I mean, if this is like the bestest that it gets for me, then how can I be one step ahead so I don't get popped like this fucking fool?
Right. Crackhead trying to,
right.
And like, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, well, I'm not going to drive around no Mustang with fucking dubs on it. I'm going to drive a Chevy Nova that no one thinks anything about. And like, that I just want to ride underneath the radar.
I feel like everything that was portrayed in that movie was instantly, if you were black, automatically assigned you as associated to some degree, like with some sort of criminal act or organization.
Well, yeah. And then if
white t-shirts, braids, like, I mean, whatever, at that point, whatever you did, I was like, and I didn't realize it at the time. But like looking back at it a few years later, when I was able to grow and like understand how this portrayal of like young men growing up in a place where, if you look at it, like resources were deprived, like they only had, or felt like they had one way out to do these things, and they became a product of their environment.
Yep.
All of that instantly became a symbol of, all right, you're a thug if you young and black and you got any of this shit. So just like you said, if you got a Mustang with rims,
gotta stay out of the street.
That's it. Like, you're getting stopped 10 times a day by police, period.
So, in all reality, maybe that movie for me was more of like, listen, if you're going to be in the game, you're going to hustle, you're going to sell drugs, you're going to do whatever you got to do to make your life. But like, these are the mistakes that you don't need to make. You got to learn how to fly underneath the radar. Yeah. And I mean, that's basically what I thought of in that movie. I was like, well, shit, okay, this is how the shit goes down. And, I some people listening to this might think, well, that's kind of a little far-fetched and that's a little extreme. But, you got to think about it. Like, what? Spike Lee's movie, what was that movie that he had with actually black people going to college?
Oh, Higher Learning.
Higher Learning.
Oh, yeah.
That was the
Busta
only
Rhymes was in
movie.
Higher Learning.
That was the only movie that portrayed black people in any kind of positive light. So like, anyone who says that like, well, you can look up to other role models or you can look up to all these other things. I mean, say that to football, say that to basketball, say that to any other fucking sport, like people look for people that look like them. Yeah. And that's why most black kids that I know, it is so hard for me to recruit young black men, teenagers, even kids to rock climb. Because there's no one that looks like them. Like Kai Leitner is the only one, or myself, or that's it. No one looks like them. So football, basketball, all these things are the avenues that they want to do. Yeah. And those avenues are controlled by people who just exploit them all through college, which now that's a whole nother ball game that we can like really kind of get on.
Hell yeah.
And like just be like, I mean, that shit's just wild.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, and this can just be a snippet of this conversation, but collegiate sports is basically new slavery. That's pretty much it, right? Same profit margins. Yeah. You paying people shit. You're exporting their talents. You're exploiting their talents. Yeah. And then, they get paid, right? So when you start to look at,
and really, you don't give a damn about their education.
No, they don't give two shits.
You don't give one shit about their education nor the physical health at this point, right? Because
they're there just to make that college money.
Until concussion protocols became a thing, like they were actually encouraging people to hit people harder, right? Remember when we used to have like the top hits? It were, like these people were literally getting laid out, helmet detached from their head at this point, and they were like, "Yo, this is the best thing I've ever seen." This was the most primitive thing that I've seen in my life. And they're making currently billions of dollars. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. College
For
sports
sure.
make like what, $12 billion or something to that degree. And then you look at the execs breakdown, right?
Yeah.
And the exec breakdown from the top down, right, where 100% of non-HBCUs, 100% white deans, sport directors, 95% white. Executives within that ranks are 90+% white. So it's like these things are in the 90s. So all the people who are actually making the money, these are white businessmen making money off of young
And the
black
athletes
men.
aren't allowed to accept money at all.
Right.
Nothing.
They will not only get expelled, but they ruin their chances of any future. Right. Going to any sports leagues, period, if they take any money. So they built in rules to protect themselves and their profits, while these young men who are 70, 80% black on these teams, with the exception of most quarterbacks, right? Team captain, person who leads the team from a peer level, these kids have to, basically it's an overseer, but these kids have to, one, adhere to all the rules, not get paid, and fucking live off ramen for maybe 2 or 3 years before they even get them to cut a contract. That's why I'm like, Patrick Mahomes, go get your money. They should be paying you double what they paying you. You got paid $503 million. They just shorted you. Like, go get more if you want to, because they're not paying these men. Overcharge them.
No,
hell no.
And there's easy ways to fix this. This is a whole nother thing we can get into, but I've talked about this, and it's like, worst comes to worst, you could set aside some money so when these people springboard out of college, like the audacity that you think that they can just run and grab a job and do this now, nah, that shit's just wild. Like if they're doing this much work and they've made your school this much money, then you need to kind of cut them a little bit of the cheddar. But that's
cut the check 100%.
it's not that big of a deal.
And I'm gonna tell you,
it's not like the owners are losing money
at all.
Those owners are making a lot of bank.
They're making a shit ton. They're making a shit ton off of tuition. They're making a shit ton off of sports. They make more off of sports than they do tuition. But they also use these predominantly black sports to fund predominantly white sports, which is crazy to me, right? So now they take their cash cow when they funnel it into the areas where you can create a scholarship for tennis, racquetball, ping pong, and slam ball at this point.
Right.
So you can do all of that, but you can't pour that money back into these young black men who they know historically have struggled financially. They come from these homes and they go to these schools with this promise of transitioning into the league, and that's why primarily they go to the white colleges, because they know that they can get into the league easier. But I tell you, man, like these young black men who are making a name for themselves, if any of them are listening to this podcast, like start going to HBCUs, bring that money there. Start bringing that money to those historically black colleges, and I guarantee you, the influence will change very, very quickly.
Absolutely.
You will see how the advertising dollars start to shift.
Yep.
You will see how the attention from the NFL starts to shift. And now those 90+ executives who are in historically black colleges, maybe they can benefit financially off this. Maybe we can think about a way to get these young black kids some money in their pocket. I don't care if it's even through a guardianship of getting their parents some money. Like,
there's ways that
let's make it happen.
There's a billion ways to fix this problem. The problem is just no one wants to talk about it because no one wants to change the situation.
Right. It's immoral to pay these kids. It's immoral for you to make money off of these kids back, man. And some of these kids, they play for 4 years.
Yeah.
And they don't end up in the league. So now you've made money off of these people.
Bare minimum, their school
4
should
years.
be paid for. But that's like the most disgraceful bare minimum.
Right. And now they have all these scholarship celebrations where you'll walk into class and they like try to trick people. Oh, you've been arrested, but you know what? It's actually a scholarship celebration. To me, that shit doesn't like hold any weight, or it doesn't like, some people I know it makes it emotional, but I look a little bit behind the layer of that. And just like you said, if you know that you are going to make money off of this young man, 18, 17 years old, coming in playing football for you, at minimum, you can pay for their schooling. And at this point, it doesn't matter what color you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, pay for that man's schooling, because you're already at a profit margin by the time you bring in any sort of advertisement dollars, or you bring in ticket sales, because you know this person is a high prospect. Pay for their schooling, minimum.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fascinating that, you're breaking down something, college football, and comparing it to the new form of slavery. And it's a extremely compelling case.
Yeah.
And that's a extremely celebrated thing in America.
Yeah.
And then Mario looks at Menace to Society, and rather than seeing it as glorifying violence the way that America wants to sell it and say, this is why these movies are a problem, this is why this music is a problem, this is why this culture is a problem.
Yeah.
Mario sees it as a warning and saying, oh, I see how it is out there, and I know that I can get by and not fall into those traps.
Yeah. If I can, one thing you said that just sort of inspired like a quick thought, music, right? Because we can talk about, I think, college football, we can talk about professional football and how these are new forms of slavery. We can even talk about, school of prison pipeline forms of slavery, right? But music, I think, is one of the biggest forms of slavery, like entertainment as a whole, right?
Yeah,
because when you look at these
big labels,
100%,
for sure.
Executive wise, like, it's the same story as footballs, right? But I think it's deeper because there's a level of exposure. Like, when these young men get on a song and like they're real good artists, they're true artists, they expose like an emotional side of themselves, and they expose the vulnerability of how they've been raised. And I think it's almost like listening into someone's therapy session. You get to share every painful thing. Like, if you listen to a J. Cole's album and the progression of how he grew from Born Center to where he is now, that man is expressing pain of what he went through without his dad, with his mom being an addict. Dedicated a whole album to addiction, because of his mom. And you look at these people who make money off of it. I'm like, yo, that's modern day slavery, because they go in, they sign a 360 deal, which basically you own everything.
Yep.
You literally own something that's called the masters.
Yeah.
Right? Like, be a little bit more like subtle with it. But these kids don't even own their masters, so they don't make money off of their music anymore, right?
Yeah.
So if they're not smart enough to negotiate for their masters, they're not going to make a ton of money. Then there's all these other things like streaming and things like that, right? So when I start to look at like the music industry, I just look at that as a space where now there is this acceptance, because there's predominantly white male kids who love like rap music. But if you go back, 1991, 92, 80s, right, late 70s, when rap started to pick up, and you look at what was happening, federal investigations were happening, right? It was on the news like every other day. I just watched an interview with Ice Cube today where people were saying, why do you glorify violence in your music? And Ice Cube was just sharing, like, this is a part of who I am.
It's journalism,
right? I'm sharing with you, like, do you take movies literal, right? So are you going to get out on the street and start killing people? He's like, no, it's just part of who I am, and I'm sharing that, right? So don't go out there and do it, but I'm going to continue to share it. And I look at what happened back in the 80s, in the 90s, where there were literally people in the streets saying, don't listen to rap music, don't do this, don't do this.
Yeah.
And then you had news, you had presidents, you had, pretty much every form of government, federal investigations trying to shut down rap music.
Yep.
And then something changed. There was a
Got
point
popular
to
with
now,
the white kids.
You don't hear about shutting down rap music. Okay. And when you think about that, is because now you look at the business of it. It is majority white executives making money, right, at almost every level. And then the artists are majority black. So when you look at who's making the most money, they're like, y'all can't mess up my cash cow.
Yeah.
So I need you to chill with the news saying rap is bad. I need you to chill with these investigations because like rap is bad. Now you don't hear anything about rap. Now you can look on. I just saw what's the guy from Migos name? Quavo and Saweetie on a GQ cover. Gentleman's Quarter, dude. That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
That is probably
I did not know they were on the cover of that.
the utmost like white thing that you can have, and they put them on the cover, right? So they're actually glorifying black music right now because it's profitable. Well, I'll give you a scenario. Get Jay-Z and other, black execs and move all that talent to having them make money. Watch what happens.
No.
Bring them investigations back. News gonna kick back up. Rap music is not great.
Tax evasion, whatever they'll get them for.
Man, they will shut that shit down so quickly.
quick.
Absolutely, it's money. You know what I mean? So when I look at those things, I just say, entertainment wise, whether it runs from sports, rap music, all of it. Like there's a level of slavery in it because one, they're underpaying these guys. They're not treating them right. They're not doing the right work to help them. So I have a real sensitive spot when it comes to that. At this point, I even stopped watching football. I'm just like,
No,
I'm not watching this
I
shit.
stopped watching at least maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I was over it. I don't know. I agree with you and everything you're saying, man. And it's like, ultimately, at the end of the day, I hope that conversations like what we're having right now, and people, and I know, I don't know. I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, and like I've told you this, I always try to play devil's advocate, and I think some people are going to listen to this and just think like, you guys are just whining about the same old thing, whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, if we're bringing this up consistently, and this is happening consistently,
Something there.
I mean, I like Texas a lot, but one phrase I learned from Texas: someone calls you a horse, you punch him in the mouth. Someone calls you a horse the second time, you can hit him again. Third time, you need to buy a saddle. I mean, that's not exactly how it goes, but you should definitely consider it. I mean, but that's what's happening here. I mean, it's like, we don't talk about this stuff. I mean, your parents before your parents and my parents before my parents, if we've all been talking about this at some form of fashion, like this is a consistent problem.
Yeah.
It's just, just like social media, I think what they're just waiting for it to do is to die down, and they're going to wrap it into a new little pretty package. And then put some kind of like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is kind of like, it's great. And the problem is what I feel, and I'm just waiting for this to happen. And I know Black Lives Matter will not let this stand. I know a lot of people won't let this stand, but I'm just waiting for this bullshit to happen where they're gonna be like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And every person of color is going to be like, I mean, when did you have this meeting? Were we at the table?
Right.
Like, no, but we kind of figured some things out. No,
We got you.
this is not how this works. Like you've been doing this for so long, and I think that's the biggest thing is from like a fundamental level is people who are in power and people who are looking at this and like, oh shit. I think they're truly saying, oh shit, because now they realize we have to be at the table.
Yeah.
It's not like you can make these decisions in some dark, cloak and dagger room in the background. But now I think people are realizing like, if these people are not at the table, and you don't get to choose who those people are, but like, if these people are not at the table, then there's gonna be backlash. Yeah. There's gonna be this, and burn the motherfucker down if we're not there. That's my opinion.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Why do you think this particular like situation, like we talk about George Floyd, right? That was probably the most monumental 8 minutes and 46 seconds in my lifetime. I know 100%, because I've never felt this way about where we are at this point. But why do you think this was the moment that we saw this monumental shift? And not only just like, I mean, we knew it was happening, but people who now empathize with what's happening with black and brown people.
All right, so I got you on this one. So I've talked about this a lot, and I have thought about it a lot. And so there are two things that's happening. I know you're so sad that nobody wants to play with you, puppy.
He's such a crybaby.
There are two things. One, we haven't seen a public lynching in probably 60 to 70, maybe 80 years. And public lynchings then, the American people were so desensitized to it that it was just like, it was like, Stonewall, the Battle of Stonewall Jackson. People went out there to watch it like it was going to be a parade. And then once they saw blood and gore, and once they saw that blood on the battlefield, people were dismayed. It's so funny. It blows my mind. I learned this in history. And I remember sitting in high school thinking, I'm like, what the fuck did they expect? But like, they watched the Battle of Stonewall Jackson happen, and then people reported to the news, if this is what war is like, we should not do this. This much blood and gore. We went out here to see two armies fight and like have a civil battle. Get the fuck out of here.
What the hell is a civil battle? Is it like a boxing match? Like, I mean, these dudes got like, guns, man.
So let's take that. So like, granted, that was way, 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 way long a time ago.
Right.
But that's the baseline.
That shit's hilarious.
Okay. So now we move into today, and like, people finally get to see a public lynching, and mind you, prior up to this point, public lynches, people used to just go and watch like it was a thing.
Yeah.
And like, they would just watch this and like, okay, cool, public lynching, great. But now that people's seen it, and no one's really seen that form of sheer grotesque brutality, now that they have seen it, it's complete utter uproar.
Yeah.
Like, this is not okay. No one should die like this. This is like that. And I only say that, and that only happens because something my mom said to me is like, that's because anyone, under the age of 35 has grown up in a mixed society. Yeah. Like, we are used to hanging out with black, with brown, with, Asian, with anybody. Like, we're used to hanging out with LGBTQ people. And to a certain extent, we're kind of like, why the fuck are you beating up on this dude? Like, why is this happening? This makes no freaking sense to anyone 18 to 25 years old, especially. They're just like, why did this happen? This doesn't make any freaking sense.
100%.
And so I think we have to take that in consideration. And so that brings us up the point with sheer, like, the brutality of the situation.
Yeah.
And so that kind of puts all that into perspective. Next, this is the most heartbreaking thing of all, in my opinion. It took the entire world with not a goddamn thing to do and sitting on your ass. Netflix ran out, Hulu ran out, all the shit that you had to do ran out. You couldn't buy no things to keep you entertained. And then you see protests. Then you see these things, mind you, that have been going on. And, I'll play devil's advocate here. Even to myself, maybe I wasn't as involved as I needed to be, but I was very aware of the situation because I choose not to get my ass whooped.
Yeah.
But they took the entire world with literally not a goddamn thing for you to do, and for you to be like, oh shit, black people are dying. Maybe I should do something about this. I'm going to go to a protest. I'm going to support the situation.
Yeah.
But like I want to emphasize this. You had literally nothing to do. You were probably jerking off right before this and just thinking about that. And then this comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you, get out of here. I mean, that's just my attitude towards it, but I'm happy that you're here. I'm really happy that you care. I hope, and I'll be more happy that you do care past November 2nd.
Yeah.
Not just to that day, but past it. And you continue to talk to your children. You continue to talk to your people and educate them and make disciples and understand that like certain behaviors are not acceptable.
Yeah.
Certain things that are not. But that's why I think this all happened, because no one had anything else to do. And finally, they get to see the reality of the situation, that black men who are being killed on a regular basis, black men and women, who are being killed on a regular basis. That's it. Because prior to that, we were always looked at as an aggressor if we stood up. You know, and I actually want to make a really strong point. You know, I've never watched the George Floyd video. I refuse to. Like, I know what it is. I'm very aware of what a public lynching looks like. I've had these conversations with my parents about, like, they will kill you in a heartbeat. And maybe it's never been that detailed, but I don't need that detail. Yeah. Honestly, the Walter Scott shooting was the most scariest thing for me in the entire world, because that's how shit goes down.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't remember that, and maybe I'm saying his name wrong, but I'm pretty confident it was Walter Scott. But if y'all remember this was in, like, in the Carolinas. White dude, brothers, whatever he said, whatever this white dude said to this brother, and most likely he's like, motherfucker, you're gonna die today. So he took off running, pop, 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 a couple shots in the back, maybe 5, 6, whatever it was. And the shit that just blows my mind is this. Like, I still can't get over this. And I want anyone listening to think about this in perspective. Like, how routine is this? This is so routine. It's like wiping your ass. The dude shot him in the back, lying face down in the dirt, walks up, looks at the situation, takes something out of his pocket, throws it on the ground, steps back, takes a couple looks, shifts it around with his foot, takes another step back, keep a couple of looks. Okay, this good, calls it in.
Not knowing all the time somebody adjacent from the other yard is catching his ass on video.
But that's the point is like, but think about that. Like, it is so fucking routine. He might as well have learned that in police academy.
That motherfucker really laid out a scene.
Yes.
Like, he said it, so you know it wasn't his first time, because it was almost seamless the way he did it.
So, and that shit is learned behavior.
Yeah.
So that means someone above him, before him, taught him that fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, that's like I don't, and that scares me more than anything, because that is the reality. If you and I were going to die in the streets, that's how that fucking shit is going to go down.
Absolutely.
Like, the George Floyd thing was grotesque and is a public lynching. That shit ain't going to happen again. Not on white people's watch.
Yeah.
Because why? They don't want that shame. They don't want that shame sauce. They ain't going to have that.
100%, man.
And so that's my big beef with this. And that shit's popping off in Baltimore. The last couple months, people talk about, like, the bullshit in Baltimore that's happening. In Baltimore is a disgusting place.
Yeah.
You know, as far as, like, equality. But that's my opinion. So, like, to me, like, well, George Floyd was terrible, but the reality of it is, as if you identify as, you know, he and him and his, and black and male, the reality is you can be shot dead and someone will make it look like your fault.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. And that is what scares me more than anything else. So that's my response, and that's why I think it is. People had nothing fucking better to do, so now let's care.
I think you're, like, right on target, man. And just, like, to take it one step, I think further, I think it was every person was so locked in. There was this fear of COVID. Every single person was locked into the news. So as the news started to shift, they didn't change their channels. I think that was a moment. So I'll share it with you. Probably don't watch it, because I'm not a person who I'm, like, super emotional. Obviously, I'm, like, monotone and shit. Like, I can try to have a conversation and fake some inflections, but ultimately I'm pretty monotone. But I say that because I'm not emotional, but I legit cried.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And the reason I cried over that video was I saw a man kneel on a man's neck for,
8 minutes.
An unconsiderable amount of time. But then it wasn't the fact that he just kneeled on his neck that made it difficult to watch. It was how casually he got up. He pulled him up by his arm. Collectively, they threw him on the stretcher. He literally, and I watched this video so many times, from the point to where he killed him to where he walked to his truck, he literally got up, looked into the camera, pulled up his belt like it was a fucking Sunday morning, and he was just ready to do his thing. And then he just walked to the car. He walked to his cruiser like it was another day. And I pray, like, because I am a Christian man. Probably can't tell about all the swearing, but I do believe that there's multiple facets to a person in life. So I'm gonna just put that there. But I pray to God that the court empties the clip on him and sends him to life and set an example. Because to take someone's life, one, the way he did, that's psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
And that person should not be upholding any kind of laws in our country, period. And anyone who agrees with him or thinks like him should absolutely not uphold any laws, period. So I'll encourage you to not watch that video because I think it'll, like, I have an underlying anger when it comes to that and it comes to law enforcement. Like, I find myself looking away from law enforcement and not even want to have a conversation with them about anything because of what happened in that moment. Automatically, like, thinking that they may agree with him, right? And I just, like, I think that now I have this underlying sort of inherent frustration or anger, and I would probably tell you not to watch it. But yeah, I think that was probably the big thing, man. People had nothing to do. The news changed the wave real quick, and then people just saw what was happening. And the other thing I thank God for, man, I just thank God for every person who is not of color who jumped out there and say, I need to help make a change. Because I can tell you, Black people don't understand the system that was built.
No, because we weren't meant to understand the system. We were meant to be docile and obedient.
100%. From the top where you talk about the commander in chief, this country has had 45 of them. 44 of them have been inherently racist. And it is told by the laws that they've instituted to help diminish Black and brown lives in their neighborhoods, right? This system wasn't built for us. So to have these people on our side that are out there having this conversation, that are out there bringing this to light, that are giving us a value in numbers, like, I'm super appreciative of everyone who came out there and protested and donated money or whatever you did, because at the end of the day, they're not going to listen to 13% of the population.
No, they don't give a shit.
And we need some white faces, bodies, people out there to share that message so it can help us navigate this system that was built for them and against us, so that we can learn how to help continuously dismantle this system. So, like, that's my piece on it. But yeah.
No, I'm with you and I agree with you. And like, this is kind of, I'm normally 99% an optimist, but this is where I get real pessimistic. And so, you know, I agree with you. And I think allies need to turn into comrades and be willing to get a little bloody.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, except for a very few people, use my white boy, I love you.
That shirt is fucking fire too. I've been looking at that shirt all night.
I know. Chris, if you guys don't know, you need to go out and check out Chris's shirt that's on his website. But you know, the thing with it is I just don't think most of them are willing to put their neck out there.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't think, like, you know, they'll get a little black eye here and there, but will they really be willing to be dragged through the mud? Nah. Yeah. Are they willing to kind of like have one of their friends kind of maybe disown them? Maybe that one motherfucker that they didn't like that owes them money. They don't give a shit about that person, but everybody else in their family or anyone else, they're not going to stay out of that. And so and am I saying this because I don't want you involved? No, I need you involved. I have to have you there. Like, let's just be honest. Like, if you are not a part of the solution, you're a part of the problem. If you choose to opt out and think that I'm not going to be a part of the solution or the problem, you are still a part of the problem.
Yeah.
You know, man, this is one of those things. It's like, listening to you talk about that whole thing, I couldn't help but think in my mind, I was like, you know, if that was a brother and this whole shit was turned around the other way, somebody would have vigilante killed his ass already, and people would have been like, oh, well, this guy's going to get 5 years to life with parole, and that's something like that. And it would have been that. And it would have been a justified killing.
Yeah.
And, you know, Tucker Carlson's ass probably wouldn't have been up there saying some shit. I don't know.
Bitch
like,
ass motherfucker.
This is where like I said, I'm really normally an optimist.
Yeah.
But I mean, consistency of behavior shows what you're probably going to do.
And that's what we need.
And I think the consistency of behavior of most people involved in this, if you don't have skin in the game, is important until it's not cool.
Yeah.
This is important until I think that it's fixed. This is important until me as a non-black and brown person, this is important until I think it is. Yeah. And ultimately, and I've said this before and multiple people have said this but what you need to remember is, if you give us power, we're not going to do what you did to us. Because one, I don't want to have to deal with the shame fixing this situation because you're dealing with that now and that's your own fucking problem. And I can't imagine the shame and I can't imagine what people who actually have minds, who actually care, have to think about. And then everybody else who doesn't give a shit about it, no, fuck all y'all. Yeah. But second is we've seen that this is not fucking effective and we don't want to be that person. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be that racist asshole. Right. I don't want to have this black supremacy and bear down on you. That is like all science points to. That is not an effective community. That is not effective. All we want is decency and respect and the ability to have all the things, life, liberty, and justice, and the opportunity to grow wealth.
Hell yeah.
And for you not to decide how and when that goes on.
Hell yeah.
But personally, I don't personally think there's enough people who are really going to say I don't think there's enough people who are close enough to the people at the top for them really to give a shit.
No.
I mean, you know,
look at the demographic.
Good old Mitch is a perfect example of that.
Who's that?
Good old Mitch.
Oh, fuck him. Yeah. I think you're 100%. And I was going in that direction that you were going there too, right? You look at the demographic of the Senate and the Congress, and you look at just executive branches of government, period. I went in, I wanted to do some research and just take a look at some pictures and look at, you know, what was their, because now I'm getting more into voting and I look at the politics of a person. Like, what have you voted for in the past? Where are you now? Things like that. And I started looking into current Senate. One, that shit is salty white. I'm talking about is
it's not even kosher salt. I know.
Fuck. I was just like, yo, like no black people. That's how we rolling. Like black people at a state Senate level, but not like when you start to look at that room. Look at the demographic.
No, man, they don't give a shit, man. They don't care.
But then when you do the math, though, right? When it's civil rights movement, when did that happen? 60s, right? So you look at up into 2000, that would make anybody born in the 60s 40. Look at 2020, they're in the 60s, right? Majority of that Senate and
old and
executive branch, them motherfuckers' average age is like 70 years old.
So they were around and they still don't give a shit.
They grew up in the era where segregation was not only legal but encouraged, where they had radio propaganda saying if you mix as races, you're gonna produce, you know, fucking mongoloid children, and it's gonna be bad for the world and society. They grew up on this. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Term limits, man. Term limits need to happen.
Vote.
I'm with you, man. It's just this is kind of going into this area where, like, I mean, I just get mad. Like, I just honestly, like, I don't express my anger very much because I don't think it's productive.
Yeah.
And also too, I'm also one of those people, like, when I get mad, I get like, I just full blackout rage. And so, I agree with you, man. It is ultimately right now, you know, if we're going to call it out for what it is, if you are 18 and you are not registered to vote, you need to vote. And I will tell you this, vote more locally than nationally. Yes, everybody needs to vote on November 2nd or 3rd, whatever that day is. I think it's the 2nd. But what you need to do, vote more on a regular basis, is vote consistently at a local level. Because shit doesn't happen at the national level. Prime example, look where we are with Corona.
Yeah.
Prime example. Okay, doesn't work. So moving on.
You don't think they handled this well? I mean, we only infected 4 million people and 150,000 of them died.
No, I mean, and majority of them were black and brown, but like, we're going to call it out. I mean, you know, what could I say? It's the birth of their new nation and clearing its shit out.
Hell yeah, man.
You know, I mean, you want to bring it out? I mean,
creative way. One thing I do, I give these men, right, these racist people, these motherfuckers are creative because they find new ways to discriminate every single day. So let's do this. I know, like, I don't want to stoke any frustration. So let's see if we can change the subject to something different. But I do, before we change the subject, I do want to give a shout out to anyone who is not a person of color, who has had a friend, family member, married by law, significant other, who like gets out and like shouts out and just stands up for Black Lives, man, because that shit is fucking real. Like, legit, like that shit is real, man. Like, I've seen that happen. Like, yo, you wearing that shirt, I'm going to tell you, like, before the night is over, I'm going to your website and buy one of those shirts because that's super dope. Support, like, black businesses and make that happen. But everybody who isn't, but not a person of color who got out there and just help, like, us stand tall and, like, a stand on y'all shoulders, man, that shit is, like, that's a deep cut right there. So appreciate it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just an angry person, so I'm going to shut up.
Well, I'll say this about the anger of this situation. About a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, I read Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I've paid attention. I've followed a lot of what he said since, watched a lot of videos, listened to a lot of podcasts, and a really consistent question through all of those was, do you have hope? And he always answered no. He had no hope. And I just recently heard an interview with him where he broke down that every successful revolution started with some big disaster, some big conflict. Something happened that opened the door for the people to come through that needed to come through the door for the revolution. And he said for the first time he's got hope that maybe this is the time.
Yeah.
And
I would like to believe that. And I definitely think things are happening. But
I think it's something small to hold on to.
I just don't think we're going to see it in our lifetime. That's like the thing that breaks my heart the most.
No.
Like, I just don't think we're going to see it in our lifetime. No. And that's it. And I've told you this before, but I personally believe America is going through like the 7 or 5 stages of grief. And the first one is always shock. The rest of them don't really come in order consistently. But we are on the apex. We're still going to the apex of shock.
Yeah.
Like, people were like, well, George Floyd was shocking enough. I'm like, no. Now you're learning about redlining, which is the thing. You're learning about all these other things. Practices are coming through.
Yeah.
I don't think we've even hit the apex of shock.
No.
And that is when I think either denial or anger is going to come out. And those are the two ones that I'm waiting for the most. Because those are the ones, like, if you were listening to this and you consider yourself an ally or a comrade, that's where you need to fortify your shit for. Because that's when shit's going to get real.
Yeah.
Because right now, everybody's just kind of like, the fire is real hot. Once other people in the spectrum, non-black and brown, start getting angry and start having denial, and you might think denial is happening now, but wait your happy ass, that shit's coming real quick.
Yeah.
But once that shit happens, shit's going to get ugly, because just like rock climbing, you get a lot worse. As you're falling, you think things get so worse, but they always get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
You're going to fall. You're going to like get your ass handed to you, get cut up, split tips. All this shit happens while you're bouldering. All this shit happens while you're figuring it out. But eventually you send. Problem is that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
And that is what I foresee coming.
Hell yeah.
So, shit's about to get wild. And I'm not, by no means am I trying to condone violence or anything. That's not my thing. Anyone knows me. I do not condone violence in any way, shape, or form. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and get one's cheek slapped without slapping a motherfucker out. So, like, I'm just like, I don't want to do violence, but I don't think it's necessary. I think we can get through our anger. I think you can get through your anger. I think you can get through your denial if you're willing to consistently just have the conversation.
Yeah.
And
communication.
Like, if you'll come to the table and talk consistently, and know that this is probably the next 50 to 100 years, maybe, I hope less. And I know that's really terrible for me to say, but I hope it's less than that. But I can't help but be pessimistic here. But at least if we can get people talking, I think that time will speed up so fast.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get faster. And hopefully, right before all of us get put in a pine box, we can see it.
Honestly, that would be amazing. I like you think that we won't see it in our lifetime, right? I like you think that it's going to get worse before it gets better. I heard a quote the other day that I think sums it up perfectly. I said, the wind blows hardest the closer you get to the mountaintop. And I think the reason that people are so willing to kowtow or tip over towards some of these things and give up certain things is because there's so many more like structures that are built in that people are masking that we haven't even gotten to the surface of at this point.
Oh yeah,
right?
dude. Oh, we haven't even seen it all.
Right. And I think there's very few things that shock me. I got a chance to watch Ava DuVernay's documentary 13th, and if you haven't watched it, please watch it. It's super dope. But Lee Atwater, he was head of the cabinet for Ronald Reagan, literally on tape, blatantly says how they made laws that they knew we're gonna hurt black people, right? It may hurt white people a little bit, but it's definitely gonna hurt black people. And I think that was a shocking moment for me. And what I started to relate it to is like, what are people who are not of color starting to experience? Because there's a little shock for us because we knew this shit was happening, right? Like we were reading this shit in Ebony magazine, but when you got In Touch magazine, they ain't reporting on that shit. They talking about what Kim Kardashian is wearing for the week or some bullshit. So like, people are starting to get this information for the first time. So it's like, it's jarring, man. And it's one of those things that I think we will see, but it's not going to come out without a lot of conflict or consequences. I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime, but I am optimistic that I will see improvement in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that will happen. Nah, I mean, I'm just an angry black man, so I'm out. Go vote.
Let's eat some food.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on this, man. Like this was super therapeutic. I appreciate it.
Like Dynell says, go vote. If you're not registered to vote, get that way. Make your vote count. This election is not about having your perfect candidate. It's about making sure that a very harmful candidate does not end up in the office, getting closer to where we want to be. We're not there yet. We're not going to get there with this election, but we need to move the needle in the right direction. Mario, Dynell, thank both of you so much for allowing me to sit in on this conversation. I hope to do it again. I'll see you both again, guaranteed. The rest of you, there's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to consider and think about, and I urge you to do that. I've got more conversations from the weekend that this was recorded. I'm looking forward to getting those out over the next months and having more of these conversations. In the meantime, you know where to find us, powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find us on the Facebooks, the Instagrams, at Power Company Climbing. We've got a lot of cool things we've been working hard on coming this winter and in 2021. So be on the lookout, and please share this conversation on all your social medias. Tell your friends about it. Tweet about it. I will not be liking your tweet. Honestly, I'm not even sure if that's a thing you can do on Twitter because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time